You're listening to Neurodiversity at Work.
Life can be so shady. The way some people try to bring you down. Why's it got to be so crazy? Always trying to give you a run around. So I let the music just take control. 'Cause it rocks my body and it moves my soul.
Today's episode is sponsored by Optimize. Optimize is a unique training platform that helps companies hire and retain neurodiverse talent. They are already working with an amazing client list globally. I actually first came across Optimize when I met CEO and founder Ed Thompson at an event. Ed's talk inspired me to actually do this podcast and all the other interesting and fascinating things I'm getting involved in around neurodiversity. If you want to find out more about Optimize and their work, head to optimize.com. That's Optimize with a Z. I also interviewed Ed in episode 2, so why don't you go and check it out there? In today's episode, I interview Robbie-Lee Valentine. He has a very interesting story. He left the UK at a young age, moved to Turkey, learnt the language, and became a TV celebrity over there. He has over 1.5 million views of his YouTube content, and he's now back in the UK and sharing his story around neurodiversity. He also tells us a little bit about his future projects and what he's going to be getting involved in. This is an absolutely interesting story of somebody's journey and realisation that they're neurodiverse later in life. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Robbie-Lee Valentine, so pleased to have you on. We've been chatting for a little while now. I've been waiting and excited to get you on the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience and let them know who you are and what you do, what you're about?
Okay, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I've been really excited about this chat. My name is Robbie-Lee Valentine, and I am a writer, a TV presenter, and social media commentator, aka imposter or jack of all trades. I don't know, but how did we meet? Actually, let's talk about that. We met on Twitter, on social media.
We did.
Yeah, I think I saw one of your tweets, and I thought, oh, this guy seems kind of on my level, on my wavelength, and here we are now recording this podcast. But yeah, I've got a bit of a long story, I suppose. I don't know. Where shall I start?
At the beginning, the beginning of time.
Okay, so I guess I was quite a strange child, really, and I always felt like I was kind of in the wrong neighborhood, in the wrong kind of skin almost, actually. And so I kind of made it my life goal, really, to just kind of non-conform, I just do everything opposite to the way everyone else is doing it. So unfortunately, I got kicked out of my childhood house when I was 15 years old. And so couldn't even finish my GCSEs. It was really hard. I was living in these homeless shelters, and yeah, that was tough. But God, that's it's just, I guess, built my character, made me stronger, I suppose. But I think I basically ended up moving and running away, I suppose, and trying to find myself. And long story short, I ended up living overseas, and what I kind of did as a child to kind of communicate and to kind of feel normal, I suppose, was to basically learn and teach myself foreign languages to a level that I reckon was not bad. And so I taught myself French, and I'd be like listening to French music in the house, and and then I basically ended up teaching myself Turkish, which is kind of odd.
Turkish? How did that come about?
Well, before I got kicked out and before I kind of was estranged from my parents, we would go on holiday in Turkey and stuff. And so I don't know. I think it was probably the most foreign place a British-born person can go and live if he wants to feel normal. So in the most foreign of countries, I felt actually like I really fitted in my own mind. Of course, people were staring at me and stuff because I was blonde and whatever, but I don't know. I kind of felt like it was my place, and so I basically started to teach myself Turkish, and I'll tell you how I did that, which is a bit of a weird story as well. And if I'm talking too much, tell me to shut up as well, and I'll move it on.
Never.
So
Go for it.
I basically was watching kind of there used to be a TV channel in Turkey called, and I'm in the south of Turkey now. I'm in a city. Well, I'm close to a city called Izmir, which is Turkey's third largest city. And it's on the Aegean coast. So yeah, it's really nice, pretty, really warm, and I'll be there, and in the house, just kind of watching this TV station called CNBC-E, and the E stood for Evde, which means CNBC at home in Turkish. And I'll be watching, I don't know, what's that program? How I Met Your Mother. I remember it so clearly. How I Met Your Mother was on, and the words that this guy, that one of the characters in the show said, like, a really kind of easy phrase, like, "Oh my God," and underneath was the Turkish subtitle. So I'd start to like write down the Turkish and the equivalent in English, and I'd go out into the street and just like, I don't know, like I must have been so confident when I was young, but just be like, like in the middle of conversations when someone's going, oh, like talking about something completely opposite and random, I'd be like, aman tanrım, oh my God. Such a weirdo. And yeah, it's basically how I taught myself Turkish. And in the end, I became so fluent that I ended up running and working in Turkey's art scene in Istanbul later on in my 20s. I was kind of always in and out of like modeling. And I mean, I say modeling, but it wasn't really modeling. It was like, just me people taking pictures of me, adverts and stuff like that, and then television stuff. And then I became a television presenter known for basically being a foreigner but speaking Turkish to the point that it's almost native.
Well,
And
let's
that's
not undervalue this.
ah,
From what I've seen and what I'm aware, you were pretty hot stuff out there. You were fairly well known. You've got millions of views on YouTube. I mean,
mm,
you've done some incredible work out there. You're quite well known,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I was. I mean, I used to go out of my house and people would want to take their photo with me. It was the weirdest thing ever. And if you're in like a bad mood, or it just kind of, it would either brighten up my day or it would make me feel like I need my own space, because obviously Istanbul's so chaotic and just crazy. But yeah, I became, I guess, a TV personality or celebrity, for want of a better word, and that had its benefits and also its negatives. But it opened a lot of doors for me, and it also closed a lot of doors for me, because I actually ended up leaving Turkey because I was so kind of vocal about the Turkish, I would say, regime, because it's not the most open-minded and kind of democratic system, is it? Let's face it. If you don't know anything about Turkish politics, basically it's Tayyip Erdogan is the president, and he's a fascist in my eyes. And I'm not. I'm a very open-minded guy. I support the LGBTQ community. I'm a feminist. So it was really hard for me to both be a well-known person, but also at the same time not being able to be myself, because I was kind of held to contract. And me being so open-minded and so saying something as shocking as I support the LGBTQI community would be me kind of jeopardizing or just basically ruining an episode of a show that I was on. And it was kind of really hard, and it was kind of almost like going back in the closet when I was a 13-year-old boy. That's what it felt like. Like I was living this lie. People assumed that I was just this, really polite, British, typical gentleman. But I mean, I am those things as well. But I'm very open-minded, and I speak my mind, and I also use that voice, and wanted to start using my voice as a platform to help other people, basically, because, most of my following were teenage girls and boys, and so they're the people who are struggling the most in Turkish society, because they're just being completely overlooked. And if you are a bit different, if your skin color is different, if you have a different personality or whatever, then you are basically discriminated against. Unfortunately, it's awful. So I started to do that. I started to use my social media platforms as a way of kind of reaching out, and I didn't get kicked out of the country, but I just left because the work dried up after the attempted coup, because I refused to publicly say I supported Erdogan, and I actually made a video saying that he was a terrorist, because I mean he is. And I was in the newspaper like, I'm a traitor. Robbie-Lee Valentine of our ATV fame is a traitor. I don't know how I can be a traitor when I'm not Turkish, but you know what I mean. That was it basically. So I ended up leaving, but
Wow.
yeah.
So,
Mm.
I mean, on that note, I think that's a really good point, just to consider what you've achieved there. I mean, to learn languages without any support, to
Mm.
put yourself in a country that probably is as different a place as you could imagine to your original home, and to do it alone, and then to become a hugely well-known celebrity in that country, and then to challenge that with being really vocal and passionate about your beliefs, I think is absolutely incredible, and shows the type of person that you are. Now, my
Thank
question
you
to
very much.
you, no, no, I mean, it's true.
When you put it like that,
It's
it does sound, quite good. But I don't know. I'm quite modest, I think. And actually, when I used to run a PR company in Istanbul, and I used to have to get people to come with me in order for them to talk about the more kind of the financial side of things, because I would just be like, oh, well, I can get this right from the Guardian, or I can, whatever it may be, but I would always sell myself short, and I would never really kind of say those things that you've just said, because for me, I guess they're just a part of who I am. That, I mean, they're obviously achievements, but still, I don't know. I think I need to sometimes actually love myself a bit more. Actually, yeah, good. Thanks for that.
No, you're brilliant. And I think that this important question now, which I ask every guest at some point during the conversation,
Mm.
um, what does neurodiversity mean to you then? What are your thoughts around the concept of neurodiversity?
I think neurodiversity for me means infinitive creativity and just bags and bags of talent. It means that no matter what society throws at us, and I say us, and I'll tell you why in a minute, will always just be, I think, some of the most creative, some of the finest minds in the entire world. And it means belonging to a club, really, I suppose, whose mission in my eyes is to just to spread more and more positive awareness. And I just don't know, I feel proud to be a kind of new member of the Neurodiversity Club. And I think I've taken on that drive and that kind of, want to spread the awareness just as much as I wanted to help other people when I was in Turkey and stuff. And so, yeah, that's what it means to me.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that you feel a new member to the club. So
Yeah.
that's interesting, because clearly you've described yourself in a variety of ways, sitting outside of the normal group, challenging the status quo,
Mm.
um, wanting to feel maybe a part of it in some way, shape, or form, maybe through the work on social media that you've done. Uh, so why is it only a recent membership to
To
that club,
the
so to speak?
Yeah, well, I mean, I obviously, when I came back, I'm saying obviously, I always say the word obviously because I always assume that people know what I'm talking about, and that's so bad. But I think that's also part of maybe an autistic trait. And I basically ended up coming back from Turkey, and also, if you imagine the chaos and the kind of, the way that my mind was kind of preoccupied by just constant noise and just constant overwhelming, kind of sensory overloads, I suppose. And I'm going to be really honest with you. And I think I used alcohol for sure as a way of helping me sleep, for example. I didn't realize at the time, but it was just because basically when I came back to the UK, long story short, I had a bit of a psychosis because it was so quiet, and all I could hear around me were the birds tweeting, and the neighbor's door like 10 streets away slamming, and it became so irritating to me that I kind of went a bit crazy, and I ended up going to hospital. self-referred myself to the mental health services, and they saw me pretty, because I was suicidal, actually. Yeah, I was on the brink of wanting to end things because it just became so paralyzing. Just these thoughts in my mind, and I'm sure, as you also know, it literally was a case of like 1,000 radio stations being on. The audio was in my mind, and I just couldn't focus. I couldn't do anything. I was literally bedbound, and I ended up basically being I ended up basically being diagnosed, first with borderline personality disorder, which is a bit of a shock. Because when you hear the words borderline personality disorder, it doesn't kind of conjure up great things, does it? And I wasn't happy with that fear. I was like, I don't know,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't feel like me, that. And then I started to basically think about my life on that kind of level, think about it in a kind of, maybe I do have a mental health condition, or maybe I do have something, a difference, a neurological difference. But I was basically then, passed on to adult ADHD services in Wirral and Cheshire. And if you know anything about diagnostic services, there are long waiting times,
Yeah.
and my waiting time was 2 years, but 2 years wasn't good enough for me. I was basically knocking at their door every day, literally phoning them up every day, saying that if you do not see me, then I don't know what I'm going to do, because I was honestly on the brink of I just felt like there was something else that was missing from this story. And I was given quetiapine, which, as you know, or you may not know, is an antipsychotic drug. And for the first time in my entire life, I actually was able to fall asleep. And so that was like, oh my God, I've not actually been to sleep naturally, I don't think, for as far as I can remember. But anyway, I ended up getting referred quicker to the ADHD services and was seen by an amazing person at adult ADHD called Helen Massey. I love her so much. She's basically saved my life, actually. I was tested, quantitative behavioral tests, and yeah, I had ADHD, and I was like, yes, finally, that feels good, man. That feels like that belongs to me. But then I was treated for ADHD, and there was just, the other things in my life kind of were just, more the routine, the ritual, like the OCD that I have, like everything just came all at once. And again, I was thinking, this is not me. Surely there's something else. And 9 months later, I kind of basically gave birth to autistic spectrum disorder. And I was diagnosed as autism. And I was like, yes, this finally feels like me. And basically, I told my parents that actually I'd managed to get them here to my flat that I just moved in. And I was like, Mum, I've got ADHD, and she went, oh, I knew it was you, not me. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, it's you? No. And I was like, no, 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 no. And then I started to see my life for the struggles that I'd gone through, and actually then started to be like, actually, you know what? I've done a lot. Considering all this going on, I knew it was hard and I knew I was struggling with something. But now that I know, it's like, finally, thank you so much, Yeah.
That's really, really interesting, and thank you for sharing. And we talk quite a lot on this podcast and more broadly when we're having these conversations around the importance of diagnosis it not being important. And
Mm,
I think it's a personal decision, and I definitely think it's uh, it's a combination of things that make it important or not as important. So
mm,
sometimes actually having diagnosis can have a negative impact on
mm-hmm,
somebody because it can tell them things perhaps they didn't want to know.
mm-hmm,
But on the other hand, what you've discussed there is there's a wide variety of things that have impacted your life that
mm,
perhaps have left you thinking sometimes um, you're to blame, or that
mm,
something else is to blame,
mm.
or that it doesn't exist, or being misinformed around what the diagnosis is. I mean, that must have been so much to try and take on that it sounds like it was a huge relief or release when you found that out.
At first, honestly, I have to say, I felt like finally I have this information that I can process. And I went through a period of depression where I was kind of like sad that I hadn't known this earlier on, because had I known earlier on, maybe my life would have panned out differently. But then the other side of me was saying, well, I didn't know that my childhood was abuse until I was in my early 20s, when I started talking about the way that my parents treated me. And having this diagnosis was also a way of saying to myself, well, now you can kind of stop blaming yourself, because now you know that it wasn't your fault per se. But I see the other side of the argument too. I can see that, for some people, they don't want a diagnosis. But for me, it was literally like I'd used, I'd run away. I used to always run away to come back, and I didn't understand why I was running away. And, I finally came back and finally settled back in the UK, and no more identity crisis. Robbie-Lee Valentine, now I know who that person is and who that person was, and all that, and that person always has been. But, getting kicked out of your childhood home because, well, your parents basically don't know what to do with you, because I'm, kicking holes in the wall and punching doors because I'm not being listened to. I'm frustrated, and they don't understand, because, no one was talking. Actually, I saw a neighbor recently, and I told her in the supermarket. She was also very, very heavily involved when I was a child. We were close family friends, and I told her I had ADHD, and she said to me in the middle of the supermarket, she went, "No, you haven't got ADHD. There's nothing wrong with you. You were just a naughty child." And I just thought, you've just basically invalidated my whole entire life again. And this is what's happening in our society. People need to know what ADHD is, and people need to know, we need to make people understand that it's not some sort of, naughty boy, naughty girl childhood kind of thing. It's an actual difference in our, the way that our brains have developed. And because we don't have it written on our foreheads, then people don't have a clue what you're talking about. So that's why I think what you're doing is so good at work, wherever it may be. It's just important to know that, we're here, and that we're going to spread as much positive awareness as we can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you shared something with me just the other day, which was an excerpt
Mm.
of what you'd written about your name. Do you just
Oh.
want to discuss that? Because I think that was really nice, the way that you described that.
Yeah, I mean, I won't read it out. Well, I can read a sentence. I won't go on because, I don't want to bore you. But that's the
You
thing.
won't.
Do you also, can I ask you a question, actually? Because it's really nice to
Yes.
speak to people who are, same as you, basically. Well, not the same, but you know what I mean. Um, do you ever feel like people are bored of you talking? Like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, and so partly for me, and this is where I see the difference between, is it a strength or is it a weakness? Now,
Mm,
often people will go, "You talk too much," right? That's somebody else putting you down.
mm,
Um, Now, but the way that I see it is actually I'm hypersensitive to people's emotions and needs, so I
mm,
can see people's responses in their face, how they're feeling, what they're thinking,
mm,
and it's tenfold. Now, the problem is with that is that it can be deemed as um, you're too empathetic, right?
mm,
You care too much. You overthink things. You overthink how people are feeling. But
mm,
actually, that's quite powerful. So
mm,
again, it could be you talk too much. Well, actually, how about you come up with lots of ideas? You're always thinking on your feet. Okay,
mm,
sometimes that needs structuring, but actually, certain people may switch off. I mean, but that happens in every conversation that's happening. I think we got to stop focusing on so much of the negative aspects, and we're the worst. I'm the worst for it.
mm,
I will criticize myself, and I'll sit thinking, I just talk too much. I just talk too much. I just sent an email. I shouldn't have sent that email. I let too much of myself be showed.
yeah. I think we've all been there, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a really great answer to my question, and it kind of, it makes me feel better actually hearing you say that, because I think also at the same time, and the reason why I'm doing it is because I want to kind of shake things up a little bit, maybe, keep the conversation kind of active and flowing in a good kind of way. And yeah, thank you. But going back to Robert, which is my name, and if you call me Robert, there's nothing down for you to tell you. The reason for that is, so I'm in the midst of writing, let's say, memoir, but the kind of in specific detail, the last kind of 3 or 4 years of my life, going back and forth between childhood and now, just to kind of explain things that I've been going through. And one of the things that I really despise is when I have to go for my appointments, to ADHD clinic or wherever, and they go, Robert, and I'm like, ugh, don't call me that. But you can't say that to every person, can you? But you can, but it wouldn't be very good. So I'm going to read a kind of maybe a few lines from this particular chapter. Okay, so Robert. This time a roar comes from downstairs, like the bark of a disgruntled dog owner upon discovering that it's shat all over the carpet again. Just like a dog, my head bows down and I sheepishly walk out of the relative safety of my bedroom, down the stairs, into the icy atmosphere of our family back living room. My name, Robert, had for the majority of my years on this planet so many negative connotations, but this name, my bloody name, would later be a catalyst to use it as a chance for self-renewal, a tool to create a new identity, as, according to Wikipedia, Robert means bright star. There we go.
Brilliant. And so I find that quite powerful because that shows through your name the journey of discovery that you've been on and where you've arrived to. Really simply, beautifully done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a bit of I'd say a sore spot, but because I think actually, it's because I've been looking for my identity because I wasn't the person that I was portrayed to be, or the way, I'm not my childhood. I'm not that boy. I'm Robbie-Lee Valentine. I am this man who's 36-year-old and now talking about something that is so profound, yet also just another part of me and another part of us. And going on to a kind of more general scheme, I think we need to accept that we are neurodivergent, but also at the same time, that's just not everything about us. We have a lot to give to relationships, to society. There are struggles, but also, we're so good. We're the people in the meetings who are the ones thinking outside the box, giving these people great ideas, giving other people, putting more money into other people's pockets when actually we have the ability and the power to kind of change so much in society. And the more and more of us that kind of want to go into the community and do that, I think the better. And so I want to kind of now, I think, dedicate my life to that mission, into spreading positive awareness and just changing the mindset of neurotypical people who are perhaps not as educated into what being neurodiverse means. And so we're in the process of opening up a community interest company, and I can tell you a bit more about that if you want. I don't know, but
Yeah, please do. Please tell us about some of the great initiatives that you're now focusing on.
okay. So I think actually just I guess having a nice good relationship with my doctors and stuff at the Treasure Rural Partnership is the diagnostic service that's kind of obviously paid by the NHS to run diagnostic services. So they're underfunded. Obviously, that's why there's so many long waiting lists. And one thing that I found was when you're diagnosed with ADHD is slightly different, but autism spectrum disorder in particular is you're diagnosed because obviously there's no cure to autism. Well, if you read the Daily Telegraph, apparently there is. I can't believe that article the other day. Anyway, you're basically kind of abandoned. And if you're an adult, and even if you're not, you're left kind of thinking, you do have this pressure. I had this identity crisis, like, you have to kind of take the puzzle, put all the jigsaw puzzle pieces on the floor and then try and reconnect them again, try and put that puzzle back together again, but then you're left on your own with no one. So I decided that it would be a good idea to do something for our community, in particular the Wirral in Cheshire, and that was to open a CIC called Neurodiversity England, and the focus of that is to offer newly diagnosed adults and children the chance to come if they want to. They can be referred by their doctors, their GPs, to a place of safety, to a place where they feel they belong, and they can have this 6-week program of rehabilitation, trying to understand themselves, but with the aim at the very end of, literally wanting to change the world and go on to do good for their communities, and remember that they're assets to our society and our communities. We're different, but we have a lot to give, and so that was the kind of the springboard for that, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's really an important initiative, and I think it's going to add huge amounts of value to actually people that need it. I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people, parents, who perhaps are recognizing the challenges that their children are having, but often they've got jobs, they've got other areas of focus, so they do what they can when they can. But that is not a continuous service, continuous help. So I think there is a real drop off. There's kind of these bursts of support.
It's funny you say that about the parents. I don't mean to cut you off, just because the reason before on the Wirral, there were 2 charities actually who were doing something similar to what I hope to achieve. And unfortunately, because they were working, they didn't have time anymore to do this great work. So I think that's a really good point, because they were obviously parents of children who actually had boys with ADHD, 2 of them that I know of. And there is a service available in Liverpool, but why should we have to go to Liverpool to access services such as this? And the cash is there. The government does have the money there to put into initiatives like this, and so I mean it's just a case of really just kind of, I guess, doing your research really and just seeing what is available, because I mean, I know ADHD, you do get some sort of support or medication, but the parents also don't even know sometimes what the medication is for, and they can go. I've been told that they're like, my boy's he's being really naughty. I think you need to increase his medication. Well, I don't think that's a thing to, because ADHD is not a naughty child. I think we need to educate the parents about what ADHD and ASD is, but also at the same time, we need to, kind of talk to them about what the comorbid kind of things are too, and the medications, what they're for, and what they treat and don't treat. Because you're a dad, aren't you?
Yeah.
And doesn't your child have ADHD?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I don't
So
know if
I
that's
think
public information. Sorry if it isn't.
no, it's fine. So basically, that's exactly it. The way that I see it is that parents, medication may be right, it may not be, but the reality is, what is the challenge that we're facing? And a child, right, may be in an environment that is causing them stress and anxiety. A drug may resolve that for them, possibly, but actually, is that the right thing to resolve it? The change in the environment might be a better way to resolve it without the drug. So, are there things that impact their behavior? Is it the way they're treated? Is it the school system? Is it what they're being asked to do? I think we try to squeeze people into boxes, and when they try to get out of those boxes, we push them back in. And if they refuse to, what decisions do we make? And I think sometimes that's not always the case, but I certainly think that's an impact. It's not easy sometimes, it's hard, but I think sometimes there are alternative solutions, and actually having support groups, having initiatives like what you're doing to actually allow um, parents, individuals to be able to explore that further with like-minded individuals and professionals, I think is incredible and so important. And you say the funding is there, but absolutely the support is not. So, one, I think it's incredible what you're doing.
Thanks.
But two, I think it would be incredible if people hearing about this gave good consideration to how they can offer this level of support, either within their organizations or within their communities, because there are parents. I'd say parents, just as you've just mentioned, I am one.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, there are parents within organizations that come to work every single day that may have children who are on the spectrum. Nobody in that organization may know it.
Mm.
They come and do the same job as everyone else, but you don't know what is impacting them in their home. And this is not just around neurodiversity, this is around people who have carers responsibility. They may be
Yeah.
looking after elderly parents or relatives or people with mental health. I mean, the list is endless, but what we do in organizations and environments is we shut ourselves off to this. We need to embrace it, and we need to open the doors, and we need
Yeah.
to support individuals. And again, that is what you're doing. I commend you, and clearly I'm here to offer my support and help in any way that I can.
Yeah. I think the beauty of actually me returning to the UK is, I think, obviously, like I mentioned, I kind of found myself, and I think, we all have a mission in life, don't we? Most of the time, it's unfortunately kind of just trying to find out what is happiness. And I think for me, this has brought so much happiness to my life, and so much kind of, a bit cheesy, I suppose now, but so much more meaning to my life. And we can't kind of instill that meaning into everybody, because not everybody's enthusiastic. But I think the really crucial part of what I hope to achieve is, kind of telling, not telling, maybe advising the newly diagnosed child or whoever that, having a neurological difference isn't a bad thing. It's a good thing. And, because in society, more often than not, it's kind of portrayed as a negative thing. And I think with obviously the main mission actually is for me to I'm going to actually make my point now, is to make them feel empowered, make them feel so positive, make them feel happy about themselves, make them love themselves. And I think sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? To love yourself. But I learned to love myself actually only very recently at a kind of Buddhist retreat in Scotland. And yeah, that's actually something else which I think I would mention that has kind of almost changed my life, and that would be mindfulness and meditation. You don't have to be a Buddha to meditate, and you don't. I think it might take some people um, a little bit kind of more time to get into meditation, because who would have thought it, right? A guy who's just couldn't even keep still, like literally in the quantitative behavioral test, I think I moved on the spot during the 20-minute test like 300 meters because I was fidgeting so much. And I was then in a bloody Buddhist retreat in Scotland, like, only a year and a bit later, having a Kundalini, concentrated so much and was so mindful and was, really into meditation, was on a retreat doing 7 hours of meditation a day, keeping absolutely still and silent and trying to learn to love myself. And that gave me a lot. And, if you have the opportunity to kind of explore that more, I would definitely try and consider that. But yeah, so it's a positive thing. It's about positivity, and it's about spreading positive awareness, not about kind of shaming. And yeah, there are adjustments to be made, of course, a lot of the time, but I think we can do that through positive dialogues like this one, you know?
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah.
So if people want to contact you, what's the best way to connect with you?
Oh, they can follow me on. No, I'm joking. You can contact me through my social media, I guess. So on Instagram, I'm at the Norlander, which is Nordlander, which kind of harks back to my Norwegian heritage. And on Twitter, I guess, as at RL Valentine. Yeah. And I'll
Brilliant.
be on your screen soon in the UK.
Go on.
Yeah, so,
Where?
well, I am in talks with a production company and Channel 4 about making documentaries about, well, they're kind of things that are important to me. So I'm sure you can imagine what they're about. And I'm busy, obviously, with the book, and that should be done by April, hopefully. So that should be out, well, I guess soon. I don't know when, but yeah, I'll be about. Just watch this space. Just follow my social media, and you can join in the conversation. But yeah, please actually do join in the conversation. Like literally, join in.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
No,
It's
thank
been
you so
a pleasure
much.
to have you on, and I know that it doesn't end here.
Yeah, I think we are going to definitely do some important stuff together from our chats. I think we've got some really good ideas. So if you're, watch this space on that front as well. But thank you so much for having me, Theo. You're a legend.
Yes, absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
This episode was brought to you by Optimize, the neurodiversity training platform for employers. If you think your business could benefit by doing more to attract and retain people who think differently, visit Optimize's website at optimize.com.